Hello everyone, this is Fred at One Bite at a Time with a Thunkable micro tutorial. Today's topic, databases and data sources using a Thunkable local table. So this is the ultimate goal of what we're going to do today. Basically, the user will enter a username and a password, and they'll save it. They can then do another one, and save that. And then they can view the data. They can delete the data. They can enter a different one. View the data. Go back. View the data again. It's still there. Go back. And that's pretty much it. That's how this app is supposed to work. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and start designing this app. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new app. Project name. Let's go ahead and create it. There we go. Screen 1, first thing we're going to do is name screen 1 what this is actually going to be for, which this is going to be our create credential screen. All right, let's jump right into this. We need a data source. So over here on the left, we have these icons that allows us to manage our application. And so we're going to add a data source. So we click on the database icon, and up here on data sources, we click the plus sign and we create new. We're going to create our own table. We're going to call this login data and create. This creates the table for us. And then in the columns, we're going to username. And in column 2, this is going to be password. With that done, our data source is now ready. So let's go back to the designer and let's start laying this out. First thing we want to do is add text inputs for the username. Let's go ahead and drag this to the center. Change this to username. Change the hint inside the input cell to username as well. That's pretty much it for the input. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this control. In the second one, we are going to call it password and change the hint so it also says password. Over here on the left, we want to make sure our username is before password. That way when we're tabbing around, it responds in the correct order. The next thing we need is a button. So we put our button on our screen. This one is going to be our save button. And the text in it is just going to be save. Let's go ahead and change some things. I like the height to be around 30. The width we're going to set to around 140. The radius, I don't like these rounded corners, so I think I want to do, let's look at 10. Maybe it's still a little too rounded, so let's go with 4 and see what that looks like. Ooh, I like that. So let's go ahead and drag this back to the center. And now we want to duplicate this, so we're going to scroll up again on these 3 ellipses off to the right. Click on that and duplicate. After that's been duplicated, let's go ahead and drag that down. This is going to be our View Data button. So we're going to say View Data button. And in the text, we're going to change this to View Data. And the reason why we duplicated this button is so we didn't have to reset all of our radiuses and our widths and our heights and all that stuff. But I do want to change the background color of this. Let's go with, I like dark gray for all my navigation things, so let's go ahead and go with that. Now for the most part, this screen is done. We are going to do something a little later where this password field, we're actually going to turn this secure text entry on. But for now, we're going to leave it just like this. So the next thing we want to do is create another screen. Well, before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure all these are in the proper order, so we don't have to worry about that next time. So username, password, save button, view data, exactly as it appears on the screen here. Now let's go ahead and create a new screen. On this screen, we are going to call this screen our view data screen. So view data. In this screen, we want to drag out a data viewer list. So go ahead and get this centered. And look, I'm using my scroll wheel here, but if you ever get it off screen, all you got to do is click on this button to bring it back into focus. Drag this out. Now we're going to need a, before we move on, let's set the data source on this to our login data. The table type, I want to go with this one. Even though we're not going to have a picture, which is what this indicates, I still want to use this one. It just allows us to see all the data in one mobile table. So since we're not setting the picture, we're going to leave that blank. Here on the title property, we're going to set that to the username. And on the subtitle property, we're going to set that to the password. When we set up our data source, if you notice, there's some default records in here, and we're already seeing those in our designer here. So that's a good thing. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to drag out a button. Unfortunately, we can't copy between screens, so we kind of have to remember how our buttons were designed, what the styling was. So the first thing we're going to do is add a delete record button. Then in the text, delete records. And this is one reason why we went with 140, so everything could fit on this. So let's go down here and change our height to 30, our width to 140, our radius I think we set to 4. And whenever we have a destructive button such as a delete, I like to use a red background. So with that done, we can go ahead and copy this button, duplicate it. Now you notice sometimes when you grab this stuff, oops, that happens. That's why you see me clicking a few times. That's not a big deal. We can come in here and we can change the height of that back to 30 just fine. And then when we get in here, we just need to make sure we grab it and not make it bigger. So with that set, we're going to change this to our navigation color again and come up here to the title, and this is going to be our back button. Here in the text field, it's just going to say back. And there we go. That's all the styling, the design work that we need to do. The next thing we need to do, once again on this, we just want to make sure they're in the proper order. So we have our data viewer, our delete records button, and our back button. So now it's time to start adding blocks and getting this code to work. First thing I like to do is just get the navigation part out of the way. So we're going to select our back button, and whenever this is clicked, what do we want to do? We want to control something, right? We want to go back to a previous screen. So we're going to click on control, and the very first thing, since it's the most common thing, is to navigate. And it navigates back to create credential screen. Well, the next button we want to hook up is the delete record. So we're going to drag this out. And what do we want to do on this delete record button? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to perform some data source operations. So come down here to the features, and where it says data source, go ahead and tap that. And what are we doing here? Well, we're deleting some rows, but actually what we're really doing is we're deleting all the rows. So the easiest thing to do that is just to drag this up there, make sure it's on our table or on our data source and on our table, and we're good to go. What I also want to do is when we delete the rows, I want to automatically navigate back to create credentials. So go back in control, we can go back to navigate. We can put that here, so after it does it, after it deletes the rows, it does it, or we can put it in line so it does it immediately. Either one should work in our case. So that being done, let's get on to the create credential screen. Now on this particular screen, we are actually taking the data inputted here, and when we tap this button, we're saving it to our database. So in our block, first off, let's get the navigation out of the way. So our navigation is our view data button. Let's go ahead and drag this over, view data. And what are we doing? We are navigating. It says create credentials. We actually want to navigate to view data in this instance, correct? So that one is done. Piece of cake on that. Next thing we want to do when save button is clicked, come in here. And what do we want to do? We want to save data to our data source. So we come down here, and how do we do it? Well, we actually want to create a row in our table. So we slide that in, and we have these two values. We have our username and our password value. Well, we get those values from those input fields that we put on the screen. So these username input is right here, and down here somewhere there should be something where we could grab that value. Here's the username hint. No, well, we don't want the hint, we want the text value. So here it is right here. So we go ahead and grab this to the screen. I noticed that you can't add these right away, so the easiest thing to do is just to drop it and then come back and pick it up, and you notice that the puzzle piece right there will actually highlight. When that highlights, you can just drop it at that time. So we want to do the same thing for the password. So we come in here for the password text and we grab that. Just drop it really quick. Come over here. Now we want to do one more thing here too. When we do set these values, we want to remove whatever text we had already inputted into this. We've already saved the data, so there's no point in keeping that text in there. So let's go ahead and in the username field, we want to set the username text value to just an empty string. And so we just slide that in here. We could either do that here on both of them, or we can do that down here. Either one should work for our purposes. And that right there, that should be everything we need. So let's go ahead and I just like going back to the design block, but you can do this from anywhere. Let's go ahead and click the web view. Let's see how this is working. So we want to do a user and a password. And we want to save this. Boom. Let's do another user. And save that. When we click on the view data, notice we have our default records that was there when we created the data source, and we have the new records right here. If we go back and then view the data again, it's still there. We can delete these records. We view data, we don't have any records now. We can create user 7. We can do guilty spark. Save it. And there's our data that we just saved. One other thing that I wanted to do is, and I talked about this earlier, is this is actually a password field. So although we're not using it to actually enter in credentials and go anywhere, which by the way, using this local table stuff, it's not very secure to use it for that. There are much more secure ways of doing that out there. So anyways, let's jump back in there and let's go ahead and on this password field, let's go ahead and enable secure text entry. Let's go ahead and run this one more time. And as we type things in, if you notice, guess what? Secure text entry. The reason why this isn't secure is if we jump into the view data, you can see exactly what I typed right there. So this is the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and you found it useful and educational, and I look forward to doing another one in the near future. Thank you guys.